The Bucks fans are here. So we are going to talk just a little bit about how we have felt that the Bucks offseason has gone so far since the draft is now complete. Free agency has begun. The Milwaukee Bucks drafted A.J. Johnson in the first round and Tyler Smith in the second round. And so far throughout free agency, the news is that they have signed DeLon Wright to a minimum contract for 1 year, which of course won't be official until this weekend. But those are all the moves that the Bucks have made thus far. How are y'all feeling? Oh, go ahead, Eric.
As Bucks fans, I can guarantee that Bucks free agency essentially starts as soon as we finish recording this episode. It's either going to be tonight or tomorrow. They're going to sign at least one or two players. They're going to make a trade or something. Something's going to happen within the next 24 hours of 7:16 Central on July 2nd. Guaranteed.
It's usually right after we get done.
Yeah. For right now, they're standing pat for the most part. The draft pick surprised me that they drafted two guys who don't project to be guys who will contribute at all this year. I thought it was pretty likely that the Bucks traded one or both of those draft picks to try to find some more immediate help, but they kept both, and they plan to roster both guys, meaning that the Bucks will have 6 young guys on this roster heading into the season, barring any additional trades or anything like that. Of course, that's the asterisk with this conversation. We are having this conversation with the information that we have right now. And right now, the Bucks are looking like a team that wants to lean in to using the younger players. So to Jeff's point that he had earlier when he first joined the stream, Jeff asked, has Doc talked about using younger players since we have like 6 really young guys and then guys over 30? And they mentioned that exactly during the A.J. Johnson, Tyler Smith press conference, introductory press conference today, in which they mentioned we have 6 core vets returning. We have 6 core guys, Giannis, Chris, Dame, Brooke, Bobby, and Pat Connaughton. He said we have 3 young vets is the wording that he used for that, for Marjon Beauchamp, for Andre Jackson Jr., and for A.J. Green. Then he mentioned Chris Livingston separately, just by saying like he's been working really hard this summer. We believe he's going to be ready to contribute this upcoming season. And then we have our 2 rookies who we're not saying that they won't play. If they show us that they are, ahead of schedule, they will find a way onto the court. But it matches what I was saying last week on the show about how the new CBA is adjusting things and how I feel like there's just going to be more emphasis on player development going forward for some of these teams, because you're going to need those cheap contracts, and having the control over them is also going to be very helpful. And it seems like the Bucks are really going to lean into that youth movement to at least a certain degree. Of course, they're going to have some guys they can sign in free agency, but what appears to be the case is that if a young guy comes into camp and shows I am better than him, he is going to get that playing time. Doc has a history of playing rookies if they have shown that they are good, and young guys if they have shown that they are good. So I don't know where that whole narrative came about Doc don't like young guys, because that's not true.
Ain't that the thing with him? Like, he don't really fuck with young players, but I guess
I mean, he was one of the people when they're getting ready to trade SGA who was like, wait a second now, y'all.
Not saying he would play him, but he was like, hey, he could be
no,
good.
He was playing. SGA played under him as a rookie, and when they were talking about trading him, Doc was one of the people like, are you sure y'all want to do this? Like, this kid is special.
And that's what I think that people get lost on, is that these coaches, first of all, like, it's in the coach's best interest to play their best players. And like, if they're not playing the young guy, it's probably because the young guy isn't showing them what they need to see to get on the court. It's like, you can't just be like, play the young guys. It's like, if they stink, they stink. Like, all the playing time in the world isn't going to matter. Like, I remember the Bucks drafted Rashad Vaughn and played him a ton, and he was garbage. And then he wound up being garbage. Like, it's not, like, yes, reps help, but like, I think that there's a baseline that young players need to hit to be able to get onto the court. And it's like, if they don't reach that, then I don't want them just on the court, especially on a team that's trying to win the championship. Like, I don't want them on the court wasting possessions because, like, you think that this is the way to develop it. It's like, as fans, we only have limited information to go off of, so you always think, like, optimistically, where it's like, oh, yeah, this guy that's buried on the bench, he could be anything. You just got to give him an opportunity. It's like, he's not getting the opportunity for a reason.
Yeah, and I think one thing for the Bucks that was interesting this past season is that Doc came in halfway through, and he admitted out loud The young guys are at a disadvantage because I don't know them, and we don't have much practice time for me to see what they're able to do. So if people want to use the last half season of Doc Rivers, like, well, he didn't play the young guys. He was playing Pat Connaughton. He already came in and said, I'm coming in the middle of the season. I have to kind of just trust what I already know as I continue to see this team. And then we saw AJ Green getting minutes. We saw Andre Jackson getting minutes. Marjon was dealing with back spasms, but he was somebody who Doc called out once the season closed as somebody who he's really interested in seeing more of next year. So, like, there's a pathway for some of these guys to hit. And I think for me, and I'll throw it to you, Tim, to tell you about the Bucks offseason, I think there's 3 big questions. And I was talking to Mike Sazek on Twitter about this. Shout out to Mike. 3 big questions for the Bucks. And I think that is what is going to frame how you feel about this team. 1, do you trust that their core, assuming there are no trades made, right, do you think that core is good enough? The 6 returning vets is good enough to win a championship. Do you believe in the Dame, Giannis, Chris trio? Do you believe in Brooke and Bobby and Pat as guys who can be solid playoff rotation pieces? That's the first question to ask. The next one is, do you believe in those young guys? Do you really think that some 1 or 2, maybe 3 of them can pop? Like, do you see a pathway for those guys to get on the court? How do you feel about those young guys? And to Eric's point, there might be a question where we're like, don't know yet. Haven't seen enough. Want to see more. But AJ Green and Andre Jackson Jr. have already shown and play like they can play a role if they can continue to improve. And that third question is, how much do you trust Doc Rivers to be your head coach? And for me, I actually think, as funny as this might sound, that Doc Rivers is probably the best coach for this situation in this team right now. But that's been the Bucks offseason so far. It feels a lot of like the CBA is kind of handicapping us a little bit. We only got that man's throw out, and we are being intentional, which they did say during the conference. We're being intentional about our roster makeup and wanting to have these young guys. We want to have a push and pull between vets and young guys on this team. And they said too, like I said, if the 2 rooks show they can play, they'll play. But I wouldn't count on that personally.
Honestly, I don't know. I feel like I'm waiting for something bigger, but at the same time, it's like several teams in the East got better. So the last several seasons and off seasons has been us plus somebody else, And so going into this one and seeing the improvement by the Knicks, or seeing the improvement by the Sixers, or seeing the improvement just on the court by Indiana, it's kind of like, okay, is there something that can or should be done by us? Or, like you said, is it enough faith and trust in what we currently have to where I'm like, we still can contend? The answer is yes. I still feel like we can contend for a chip. The answer is yes. I feel like the guys, if we stay pat, is good enough to we're good enough to make a run and give people issues, because like we alluded to earlier, Camille, you said earlier, like Chris, Dame, and Giannis is still an issue. Brooke, there's still an issue.
A big
Bobby
one.
Showing up in the playoffs, showing up throughout the season is an issue. Well, second half of the season, but still, showing up is an issue. Pat Connaughton is consistent. Like, he's going to be there when we need him, typically. He's playoff games where we need something to happen, and we've turned to Pat. Pat's made things happen. But we also have an influx of athleticism, an influx of talent, an influx of youth, where AJ Green is a knockdown shooter. Like, we expect if that motherfucker go up, we damn near expecting it to go in. Rather he on the move or standing still, like we expecting that bitch to drop. With Ajax, I said it last year a lot. He was where he was last year. We expected Marjon to be at. So if he can improve on that, he's going to be a real problem. And then he's also going to have a year under his belt with experience. We call him the young vet. Marjon, for example, again, everybody was kind of going off of the freaking game he had in the offseason where how much he put up? 80, 60? Some shit
that
like
Pro-Am game he had over the summer?
You got something. There's something there. Like, regardless if it's a Pro-Am game, putting up that many points and shit like that, something there. Everybody ain't doing it. But you're displaying a skill set that could If you continue to work on it, it could throw. Like you could be more of a consistent 3-point shooter. You could be more of a consistent defender. You could be more of a bigger body that can kind of do a Swiss Army knife kind of. If we can put all of that together, and we have lineups say, "Hey, we want to get out and run," so we'll put Dame, we'll put Ajax, we'll put AJ, and we'll put Marjan out there with Giannis at the 5 temporarily.
Just go crazy.
Yeah, like we want to run with these cats. Okay, we're running. Oh, hey, we need more defense. So then we have DeLon Wright come off the bench. I heard he's a defensive guy. We have DeLon, but they want to keep it some scoring. Go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick to DeLon Wright. It's a good pickup in my opinion. He's not the starter, but I think he's a really good rotational piece, and he hits a weakness that we saw with the Bucks last year, which was perimeter defense. Like he's a good point of attack defender. So I do think he is someone who is going to be helpful. Yeah.
Again, we want to get some defense out there. So we'll throw Ajax, we'll throw Wright, we'll throw Giannis, we'll throw you still want to have Giannis in either situation. You can have Chris out there because he's not even though he's not as athletic as he used to be, Chris is still a problem. And he can hold his own enough. Maybe a small ball 4 to where, okay.
That's what I want to see. I've been telling y'all this since last season. I want to see the small ball lineup with Chris at the 4 next to Giannis, and then just
everybody
figure that out.
People moving more towards mobility, so like you're seeing 6'8" power forwards now. So Chris is right there with them. You're seeing 6'9", 6'10" centers and shit like that. So like because mobility is becoming a thing and athleticism is becoming a thing, it's not like we're having a bunch of 7-foot giants all over the place like they used to. It's a lot more mobile, smaller guys. So having Chris playing a small ball 4 at this stage in his career, he still had an old man strength and shit.
The change up pitch, to be clear, like not all the time, but just
something is like, hey, I want to switch the lineup up a little bit. Let's do a little something different here, but we can still keep some offense on the floor and not necessarily kill ourselves defensively. Last year, once we changed out a player or two, our defense was damn near shot. And we was also struggling offensively off the bench. So it was like I feel like with the guys that can develop and the guys that we currently have healthy, hopefully we be healthy, we can still pose a really big problem in the East. It's just one of those, like, there was nothing flashy done, and I know a lot of people want the flashes. They've seen Philly and they've seen New York. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to necessarily be flash to be a.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, where I don't think that chasing what other teams have done is a prudent strategy. It's like you only have so many pitches that you can throw. So, like, don't just go chasing something just for the sake of doing something. But I do think that last year kind of showed that this mix ain't really mixing. Like, you need a different element to it, which I don't think necessarily internal improvement is going to change. I think that a lot of the remnants from the title team were specific to the title team, and we kind of have to recalibrate the mix around Giannis and now Dame, and to a lesser extent, Chris. I think that to answer your questions, Camille, I don't know if the returning core, you have Giannis, so you're always a contender. Like, that's the baseline, but measuring, like, you do need to, like, take into consideration what your opponents are doing and, like, the teams that they're building, and kind of make sure that you have the versatility to be able to match up against different styles. Unless you're just overwhelming them with talent on your own and they need to match up with you. I don't think that the Bucks have that mix right now, so they do need to kind of rearrange some of the deck chairs. Whether that means, like, trading Brook for a more versatile big, or trading Bobby for wing help, or trading Pat for a backup point guard, whatever it is, like, you kind of need to use those. I hate talking about them as assets, but use those assets to go out and get better fitting pieces around, like, your core 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, like, hopefully the young guys pop, but, like, I don't know if there's, like, I have the most faith at this point in AJ Green because, like, there's a proof of concept there. Like, he has an elite skill that you can utilize, but even still, like, I think that tops out as, like, the 7th guy in your rotation. maybe 8th, like where he might be part of the playoff rotation if he can really shoot it, but like he has his limitations on the other end that you kind of need to work around. And with Dame, like you already got a guy that you got to work around defensive limitations. So again, it's kind of like I think that they have an abundance of talent. It's just like the mix of the talent isn't really there for like a cohesive team at this point.
Yeah. And I think part of the trouble with trading Brook Lopez is like there are trades you can make to get under the salary, to get under the second apron. There are trades you can make to get younger, but I haven't heard any straight up where I'm like, that makes the Bucks better. The only one that kind of was like interesting to me is Wendell Carter Jr., but even yet and still, he's not necessarily as good as Brook Lopez, but he's younger and he can give you a lot of what Brook does, just not the same level. So it's like, do you want to take that step to do that? And the more I'm thinking about it, because I do think that Brook, Pat, and Bobby Portis are all still on the trading block. If a move comes that feels like this can make the Bucks better, I think they would do it. But again, the second apron, you can't aggregate contracts. So you cannot send out 2 guys for one. There are some loopholes where you can send 2 guys, but the trade has to come back in underneath the apron. Like, not going to get into all that. But again, I don't want the Bucks to make any moves just for the sake of making moves. I think that I actually have a lot of faith in someone from that young core popping. Like, I just got a feeling that it's going to be somebody who's going to come in and surprise. And they still got 2 free agency spots open. I kept saying I hope the Bucks roll with 14 and that they can just keep that 15 spot open in case somebody who they thought was going to be too expensive to sign in free agency falls back. Like Gary Trent Jr. is a name that I'm throwing out there. I'm speaking into existence because he is somebody who I thought would go for the mid-level, and apparently there is no market for him at the mid-level. So, like, if Gary Trent Jr. wants to come be the starting shooting guard for the Milwaukee Bucks next year, do it.
Can I just say I'm tired of 6'4" shooting guards? Like
I know.
Especially since like we've already seen Gary Trent and Dame next to each other.
No,
that's not really correcting any of the problems that we had last year in the backcourt.
But where they are, what
I
they
feel
can
you. Okay.
That's one where I'm like.
Also, his market is his market for a reason. So
that is true. And again, the Bucks can only throw out minimums anyway. So your choices are very limited. It's not a great free agent market as it is. Tim, were you going to say something?
I thought I seen him get signed, but I guess not.
I think Gary Harris.
No, I was looking at Trent the other day.
But we'll see how it goes. The Bucks should be. I'm looking forward to Summer League. Like, I'm normally kind of excited for Summer League, but this is a year where I'm like, I really can't wait to see what this looks like. So to wrap up,
half of their rotation or not
right.
rotation, like half of their roster should be there.
Right.